We're about to look at two news items about school children in Gaza since Operation Cast Lead. One by CNN's Christian Amanpour, one by the BBC's Katya Adler. Both of them frame the story as one of innocent children with a hunger to learn, lives destroyed by devastation Israel wrought, and thereby driven into the arms of radicals. CNN's Rosemary Church sets the tone.
Welcome back, everyone. We know many of those most affected by war are, of course, children. And in a new CNN documentary, Chief International Correspondent Christian Amanpour takes us inside Afghanistan and Gaza and beyond the front lines. A separate battle is taking place for the hearts and minds of the next generation of Muslims. Experts say living in conflict will lead many to a life of extremism.
Of course, this observation cuts both ways. Jihadi groups who want to recruit the next generation of Muslims have an interest in this conflict. That may explain why Hamas keeps firing rockets at Israeli civilians. Let's see if Christian deals with that.
Christian came face to face with one young boy who's at risk. His name is Hamza.
Children usually love to crowd around our cameras, but war has terrified them. And at first they stayed away because we were strangers.
Thank you. You're welcome.
We brought them stickers and toys to try to put them at ease. But it was hard work with some of them.
You want it?
They're convincing him.
Deeply suspicious. Yeah. There you go.
He would only take the ball after I had left it on the ground. And even then, he needed comforting.
They're sweet to each other, the children.
Yes, sweet, like this 4-year-old girl.
بسملة انتي تعرفي اليهود؟ بتحبيهم؟ لا ما بتحبيهمش ليه؟
كده
عشان هم ايه؟
هم قردة وخنازير.
عشان هم قردة وخنازير؟ مين قال عليهم كده؟
ربنا.
Since this latest round of war, teachers have noticed not just sadness, but anger. Hamza hits a boy with the ball that we've given him. When an adult tells him to share, he makes an extraordinary threat. He wants to bring in the Hamas militia. For him, they are the strongest authority.
He thinks they are the strong ones.
Christian, did you tell us whether this teacher is in Hamas? Do you even know? By the way, what's the opposite of anger management?
Hamza's reaction is not unusual.
What are you seeing in terms of...
According to prominent child psychologist Dr. Ayad Sarraj, war has taught them that not even their parents can protect them.
Sarraj is a master at blaming Israel and avoiding criticism of Hamas. He even managed to tell the Goldstone Commission that it was the Israelis who demonized the Palestinians. The mission members didn't ask him about the Palestinian educational techniques. Will Amanpour?
A young boy will start to look for another symbol of power to identify with, and the replacement was the militant. And that was the way into the militant group.
Is this just natural or cultivated? Here's a good place for Amanpour to show this footage, an exclusive given to CNN, by the way, and ask Sarraj about this graduation ceremony.
Dr. Sarraj now sees a disturbing trend. When he asks them what they want to be when they grow up, a third of them say,
I would like to be a martyr.
Trend? Did you say trend? Like this is new? This has been going on for over a decade.
We are teaching them that after the suicide attacks, the manhood makes it go to the highest state in paradise.
With results like this.
لا أمرك إني أرى مصرعي ولكن الأقصى أرى مقتلي دون حق السليب ودون بلادي هو المبتغى أخوفا وعندي تهون الحياة.
Saraj wants us to think this is Israel's fault. Does the idea that Hamas systematically abuses their children with hate-mongering have a place in Amanpour's journalism? Will she have the courage to ask?
When he asks them what they want to be when they grow up, a third of them say,
I would like to be a martyr.
Really? That's very high.
That's very high.
It's probably higher.
بوعيك حكيت عن الشهادة كشيء جميل، أنت بتعتقد إنه شيء جميل؟
الشهادة كتير شيء جميل جدا جدا، كل الناس بتتمنى الشهادة. أيوه. لأنه يعني إيش في أحلى من إنك تروحي على الجنة.
Remember, this is about children who want to blow themselves up in the midst of women and children.
We are teaching them that after the suicide attack, the man who makes it go to the highest state in paradise.
When you have an abnormal environment, you're going to create abnormal reactions.
Who created this abnormal environment? Let's see if Katya Adler from the BBC can do better.
Today we travel to Gaza, where the Palestinian Authorities say more than 400 children were killed in last winter's Israeli offensive.
No one claims more than 400, which would be almost a third of the total casualties. The Palestinian Center for Human Rights, whose numbers by October had been widely challenged, claimed 320, and that included 16 to 18-year-olds, not the sweet children we're looking at. Is Katya, like Jimmy Carter, playing the favorite Palestinian game of inflate the statistics of Israeli damage? And the children, were they protected from the hostilities or sent into the battle zone?
Well, I know what this looks like. It looks like fun and games in Gaza, but actually it's far from it. When you get to know the school and the students in it, you learn just how much they suffered during Israel's 3-week-long military assault earlier this year.
No mention that Beit Lahia was a major site where Hamas stored weapons and fired rockets from.
Some students were killed, others lost their homes, and many of them are still trying to get over the trauma of those days, as we found out.
School time in Gaza. The streets are crowded. Most people who live here are under 18. 9-year-old Huda and her brother and sister set off from their makeshift home. Their real one was bombed earlier this year in a war with Israel. Their school, run by the United Nations, came under attack too. People in the school said it was raining fire that day. Israel launched white phosphorus, it says was aimed at protecting Israeli soldiers from Palestinian gunmen. But the school was packed with families sheltering from the war. 2 little brothers were killed here. Women and children were wounded. Some classrooms burnt beyond recognition. They've since been repainted, but the children's memories of that day can't be erased. Everything was burnt and destroyed here, Mahmoud told us. How can we forget the war? Lots of people died. The Israelis bombed our things. Why shouldn't we get an education like they do? It's our right to live in freedom and safety.
Good question. Of course, you might want to ask your parents and neighbors why they voted for Hamas.
Israel's military offensive is over, but it still wants to punish Gaza's government, run by men who believe Israel shouldn't exist.
How quaint. She can't even say men who want to destroy Israel, much less something like this.
يا
Israel limits supplies coming into Gaza. So rebuilding war damage is almost impossible. Life for everyone here is tough.
People here in Gaza say they feel they're living in an open-air prison, and because of tensions with Israel, say they're always waiting for the next war, and there's nowhere to run. The borders with Gaza are sealed shut.
Sealed shut? Israel lets people through, mostly for medical care, but has to check each person to prevent suicide bombers from coming in, even cancer patients rigged to blow. But more significantly, the border with Egypt is shut, even though the Egyptians are not under constant threat of martyrdom operations. Here's Ben Wiedemann commenting on from whom the Gazans can expect better treatment.
It's only Israel that controls the crossings into Gaza, with the exception of the one in Egypt. And so, therefore, if Israel were to cut off the supply altogether, they would depend on Egypt, and that's not a very good place to depend on.
So the kids of Gaza say however much education they get, their future feels bleak.
What's the time?
What's the
Time, number 2, what's the time?
Seems like a nice English class. Of course, Katya either doesn't know or doesn't care to let us know that they learn English because it's the language of the enemy.
في المستقبل شو حبتكوني إن شاء الله؟ مدرس لغة إنجليزية. لغة إنجليزية كتير حلو. طيب ليش بدك تصيري مدرسة لغة إنجليزية بالذات؟ عشان أعلم الأطفال لغة عدوهم.
Number 2, what's the time?
Teachers in Gaza say living in a war zone affects children's performance at school. Huda, like many of her friends, suffers from nightmares. At night, I dream the Israelis will come back and bomb us, Huda told me. I'm scared. At school, we study and play, but we still remember the days of the war. Between Israeli airstrikes and Palestinian gunmen firing rockets from their neighborhoods, being a child in Gaza means growing up with conflict.
This is the only mention of Palestinian gunmen in this piece, and they don't even get their own sentence. No mention that those gunmen and many of these teachers are in the same organization.
Well, Israel says it doesn't want to hurt little children like this. It doesn't want to hurt any innocent civilians, it says, but it will continue to do whatever it takes to protect its citizens from attack by Palestinian militants. In the meantime, everyone in Gaza says that they feel they're being punished. Bear in mind, of the around 600 schools in Gaza, just under half were either damaged or destroyed during Israel's offensive, and everyone here says they're still trying to pick up the pieces.
Morrow compares it to the Stockholm Syndrome. It's so dangerous in the Palestinian territories that out of gratitude to those who protect you, you're not going to say anything that would anger them. So in the journalist's permanent struggle between loyalty to her audience and to her sources, how well have Adler and Amanpour done? You, their audiences, be the judge. This is Richard Landis from The Second Draft.